Okay, I think we're about ready to start. There we go. Okay, we're about ready to start, so if you'll take your seats and get ready, we're about to begin here. So welcome everybody to Mayoral Debate. We're glad to see Mr. Becker and Mr. Nelson here tonight. So my name is Hank Dunn. I'm going to be your moderator tonight, and I hope we'll make it easy for you and ask the right questions and go slow enough to understand the questions. Last time we were accused of asking questions that took 10 minutes to ask, and we're going to try not to do that tonight. But this event is sponsored by the Apopka Involved Voters. It's just a community group that seeks to better understand the current situation out there and to help raise awareness to our community. The event's also being broadcast tonight, as you can see, so people can actually log in and see those things and see them again if they want to view them later. We welcome the opportunity to get to know both candidates better and for the community to know both candidates, and obviously it is Mayor Brian Nelson's running again and Kyle Becker's running as well. So welcome, gentlemen. There are going to be 10 questions asked of you tonight, and you'll both get those same 10 questions. But then there's also going to be 2 additional questions that you will get that are individual to both of you. So they'll be 2 that would be for Mayor and 2 for Mr. Becker. So each candidate will be given 3 minutes to answer each question, and there's no rebuttal. It's just an answer, so we're not going back and forth there. I would like to reserve the right to ask a follow-up if I think it's unclear or there's anything that I and my stupidity can't understand. Please let me clarify with you. A timekeeper, Mr. Olson here, will be keeping time, and he will tell you when there was within about, 1 minute?
1 minute, 30
He will
seconds.
raise up that sign so you'll know you've got 1 minute and 30 seconds to go. We'll begin with the mayor, and thereafter we'll just alternate between the 2 candidates to go there. And we respectfully ask that the candidates and the audience tonight follow with the general guidelines for civility and respect throughout the event, which we know you will. We're here to learn about your positions and the issues and not what you think of each other or each other's positions. And we also ask the candidates and the audience to please mute your phones that you may have on. And let's begin. At the end of the question and answer period, each candidate will be given an additional 3 minutes to make a closing statement and to inform the voters why they should vote for them and why choosing them would be the best thing for Apopka in 2022. So before we begin, I want to give each candidate a chance to do an opening statement and to tell us about themselves and why they're running or seeking re-election. And for that, let's begin with Mayor Nelson.
Well, thank you, Hank. Thanks, everybody, for coming out tonight. Glad to be here, to kind of show the issues and what's important to Apopka. Well, let's just go back and just to let everybody know, probably most of you know, born and raised right here in Apopka. Went to Apopka High School, graduated then from University of Florida, came back to the family nursery, Nelson's Florida Roses, where I spent 20 plus years there. Sold the nursery, started in an insurance agency after selling the nursery. So been there for 25 years, still being operated by my wife and my daughter, Linda. So along the way, I thought, well, I'd love to get into politics at some point. And so family's really important to me. I said, you know what? There's a time and a place for that. And I said, you know what, when the kids are out of school, that's the time I want to, look at running for office. And so I said, our daughter was graduating from high school, and I said, you know what, there's a seat opening up in the legislature that I said, it's tailor-made for somebody from Apopka with my experience. And I said, so I entered that race, served there in the legislature for 8 years, then got the opportunity to serve at the county for 3, and then this job came up. Obviously, I mean, most of you know, Mayor Land was my uncle by marriage, but always respected, admired the way he ran this city. Always looking at, how we can save a nickel, how we can treat the not only constituents but the employees, with a lot of respect. So I thought, this is the kind of leader I want to be. It's a legacy for me. And people say, gosh, you're going downhill. You're going from the legislature down to the county, down to the city. I said, this is my home. This is where I've raised my family. This is where I've had my businesses. I've been involved in a lot of different activities. Was Chamber of Commerce president, been a chamber member for almost 40 years. Been a member of Rotary for about the same amount of time. been a member of Sertoma, will be the incoming Tiger Bay president. I'm a member of Career Source Florida, member of the CAT Fund at the state level, and even been invited by the Florida Chamber of Commerce. I've been invited by AIF, which is another big business organization, to come to be on panels. So well respected in the legislature in Tallahassee as well as here locally. It's just a great opportunity. I've got a wealth of experience, not only being a small business owner for 40 plus years, but also with my contacts across not only the city, the county, and the state. So I'm the guy that can run this. We've done a great job turning what was a kind of a financial disaster around, and we've really made progress even in spite of COVID. Because if you look at COVID and what it's did to our budget, we found out in March that we're $3 million down, and the end of our fiscal year is the end of September, and by the end of that fiscal year, we were able to cut some expenses, and we were able to balance that budget, which was no small feat. So we have really done an amazing job with the team. It's teamwork. It's absolute teamwork, and we've been so blessed with such great team members at the city, and couldn't be more proud of the team we've assembled here at Apopka, and look forward to another 4 years.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Becker.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the Apopka Informed voters for putting on tonight's debate, Victory Church and the Bankson family for allowing us to have the event here this evening, and to the Apopka Chief for streaming the event tonight. My name's Kyle Becker. I'm a two-term city commissioner of Seat 4. Moved to Apopka about 15 years ago, was born and raised in the Orlando area, and I'm raising my family, my wife Kelly, and my 3 daughters, Madeline, Emily, and Lucy. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time on council. My day job, I work in the corporate world for the past 20 years. I've got executive level experience where I've managed budgets, I've managed teams, and I've run those successfully. So I've got the leadership and executive skills to be able to do a good job as your next mayor. But I'll focus on, this evening, if you want to find out bio information on myself, I've got all my bio information on kyleforapopka.com that you can go and check out for yourself. But I wanted to directly address a mail piece that went out regarding me earlier this week by my opponent. And I wanted to directly rebut some of those points. First off, it was a horrible picture of me, but that's okay. I get how these things work. But let's touch on the idea of having the financial house in order, because my opponent likes to go back to that several times. Our financial house has never been out of order. Our audited financial statements year in and year out talk about how strong we are as a city in terms of our financial position. Our general fund reserve has never been below a certain percentage where it's been of major concern. The first thing on the mail piece that was sent out regarding me was the idea that when in 2016, 2017, I had been part of a council that had raised the property tax rate, almost making you believe that he's never raised your tax rate, or that's the end-all be-all for this city. The tax rate has gone from 3.78 under his administration to 4.18 where it is currently. That's an 11% increase. It also talks about how I'm going to create all this debt for our city. It's not about talking about debt or property tax rates. It's about creating the outcomes, the desired outcomes that our city residents expect of this council. We can sit here and talk about financials all day long, but if we're not hitting the mark in terms of basic infrastructure needs, staffing our departments properly, and everything else that goes along with running the city properly, then we're doing our residents a disservice. Most egregiously, there's language on there that if I'm elected, there's some sort of idea that there's going to be sweetheart development deals that I'm going to be a part of. That's an attack on my character, and I don't appreciate that. There's also talk about the wastewater treatment plant. We're a growing city. We grow exponentially every single year, it seems. That wastewater treatment plant, while needed, was actually before my time on council. The previous administration, prior to my time on council, got the legwork going in terms of approving that wastewater treatment plant. But that wastewater treatment plant was to serve two purposes. It was to meet the growing demands of our city, and that growing demand is going to continue to increase within the city of Apopka. And it was to make sure that we were environmentally safe for our waterways that are around this area. The wastewater, the rates themselves that he talks about in that mail piece, those were set in motion prior to my time on council as well. So stop fighting previous administrations, fight me as a commissioner, and let's fight the issues here tonight. I would appreciate your vote on March 8th, and thank you all for being here tonight.
Okay, gentlemen, we appreciate that. Let's begin with the questions, and we're going to begin the question with the mayor. So here is the question, and I'll be happy to repeat it. I do speak fast sometimes, so don't hesitate. In the Apopka City Charter, the charter states that the mayor is the CEO of the city and shall be responsible to the electorate for the administration of all city affairs placed in his or her charge. How would you define your management style, Mayor, in governing the city?
That's a great question. I look for consensus. I look for team building. One of the things we came into, Edward Bass, who's my city administrator, and we came in, what we found out is a lot of the departments were in their silos, that each department kind of ran on their own and didn't want help from anybody, nor did they want, any input from other departments. So what we've had to do is build a team that, that IT can talk to public services, that public services can talk to police, police can talk to the administration. So we've really tried to work on building a team that the departments can work together to make us more efficient. When we came in with a lot of overhead, and we were able to reduce the overhead across the different departments by over $600,000. So that's more than the tax cut that we gave you this year. So $600,000 just in overhead. We'd rather put those dollars back into the field, back into the guys that are actually doing the work, rather than putting them into overhead. So we've looked at those things and say, okay, how can we spend our money wisely? Do we need extra people? Can we use technology to reduce the amount of staffing as we grow the city? And so that's what we've tried to do is by the end of this year, we'll have all of our departments will be digitized. Everything will be electronic. We won't have anything will be paper pushed. All of our community development will be online. All our public services will have utilities will be all online. So we'll have the ability to do everything online so that it will make us more efficient so that we won't need additional resources as far as employees go. So we've got those challenges. We've really overcome a lot of them. We have had people have to step up. We've had people that with great experience, but we've got to challenge them. We've got SOPs now that we've never had before. We're starting to work on those. We don't even have, when we got here, the ability to know what reports were needed either at the local, state, or federal level. Public Service had no reports that were available or what needed to happen. So if somebody who was writing that report was gone, got sick, had to leave town, we didn't know how to fill out the report. So we've got now in place all of those different reports that will give us the ability, so if somebody's out, that we can go in and get that report finished so that we don't get out of compliance with the state or the federal government. So we've done a great job, but it's hands off. I'm there more as a cheerleader and a coach.
Okay. Mr. Becker, would you like me to repeat the question, or do you have it?
Leadership style.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
Well,
How would you
I
define
think
the
that-
management style?
I think, well, leadership, I want to lead, I don't want to manage.
Mm-hmm.
And to be a good leader, you have to realize that you're not the smartest person in the room. You have to realize that there's people around you that have life skills that you may not have, worldviews that you may not have. There's very highly specialized skill set within the city of Apopka employee base. You have highly specialized areas. You have public services department that goes out and fix water main breaks and wastewater treatment plants. You have the fire department who has very highly specialized life-saving skills. Police departments that have to be very situationally aware of their surroundings. And you have to have a good leader that can address each one of these variations in the workforce that you're managing. Contrary to my opponent's belief, he was quoted in the Apopka Voice as saying that he doesn't believe that I've ever hired an employee before, which I find ridiculous because I've grown teams, I've managed teams, and whereas I may not focus on having to have fired people before, like my opponent boasted in that article, I want to coach people up, mentor people, make sure that you have an environment where you can go through the chain of command and feel like your opinion is valued. And by doing that, you have to create a work environment that people, when they go to when they go to that job every day, they feel like they have a safe environment in which to work, in which to thrive, in which to succeed. And that goes to proper staffing, proper equipment. The morale right now. I mean, again, like I said, the last debate, 40% of the workforce entertain unionizing over the last year and a half. 20% of that workforce did. And I hear that the employee morale is just, it's not good right now. And you have to have the seat at the table. My plan when I come in there, it's not about just working directly with the leadership team. It's understanding the subject matter experts in the field, getting their viewpoints and making sure that if there's any blind spots or any gaps in us, that's the barrier for our success as we address those things. So a very open, collaborative leadership style.
Okay, thank you. The next question will start with you, Mr. Becker, and it is, how do you define your budget and what results can the residents and businesses expect for the next 4 years from your budget?
Yeah, I mean, you have to go a needs-based budget. We have to catalog our critical needs and budget for it. You look at the staffing. I've been on record as talking about, we always talk about the fire staffing model. If we have needs there and the staffing model is not where it needs to be, we have to make sure that we budget for that. There was a question asked of us before is, all these costs come to mind, great, but how are you gonna pay for it? And there's many different ways that you can look at that. You have to look at, are we optimized in what we charge in terms of city fees for the services that we provide? And if we are not charging enough to warrant a quality workforce or a quality environment, we have to look at that and we have to tweak that. One of the things I brought up before is talking about the permitting fees. I mean, the development community, the developers themselves are coming to us and saying, hey, your fees are so below what other cities are charging. We don't mind paying more if it means we get a better quality of experience with your city. And that creates an environment that's good for the external community, from residents' service level that they get provided, the development community, but most importantly at the staff level. They feel like they've got people to back them up. If we're understaffed, that impacts morale because people don't feel like they've got enough time to take paid time off and enjoy vacation, have that work-life balance. So it's all my day job, I've managed capital budgets. So how I approach our capital budget planning, I managed a capital budget of over $325 million. Our approach was every year we had what we called the pitch room. Anybody that wanted money to help develop their software application that they were building, they built a business case. And the business case justifies why you're doing something. Now in the corporate world, a business case is going to be more dollar focused. What's my return on investment in terms of profitability? In a city function, that presents itself as quality of life in terms of from a resident perspective as well as an employee perspective. So you fight for what you know needs to get done, and you route all the money to the best and most proper use.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, would you like me to repeat the question? Yes, please. Yeah. How do you define your budget, and what results can the residents and businesses expect over the next 4 years?
Well, we start early in the process. We get all of our department heads together, and we said, okay, what's our baseline budget? Where do we start from? What are the needs of the department? Okay, you got to start with needs. We're gonna make sure that those are all financed. Then you say, okay, well, now list every want you want, okay? And so we have them list all their wants. Every department comes in, and we spend half a day with each of the departments. Okay, what do you want? And then we said, okay, now let's prioritize. Is that something we have to do this year? Is that something we can wait 2 years or 3 years? And then we start to manage those budgets. So we start out with we were at a budget. Our general budget's a little over $50 million. We probably started at almost $80 million, the first, pass at it. So then you got to prioritize those things, the wants that each of the departments want. And then you say, okay, can we get by another year? And sometimes you look at grants. Grant opportunities are always, an option for getting funding. We put in several years ago, because we were always looking for grant money, but when we got grant money, we didn't have, it wasn't in a budget line item so that we could pull out to cover that expenditure. So we put $250,000 in a line item so that if we get budgets we get a grant that's for $1 million or $500,000, it's a 50% match, we've got the money to put in there, and we don't have to go to reserves to fund that. So that's kind of the way we look at things. We go to each of the departments. They tell us what they need and then what they want, and then we determine the wants. What can we do? How do we prioritize those? And so we look at a 5-year plan. But I do want to go back and a couple of things here. When he talks about the mail piece, and yes, the wastewater plant, fertilizer plant, he did vote for it. He voted for it. The consumer debt, $3 million in consumer debt, he voted for it. The Highland Manor, he sold the Highland Manor for $294,000, period. He can talk about somebody before him had started the process. He did it, not me.
Okay, Mayor, we're going to start with you again. So, Mr. Nelson, if you, as mayor, what specific policies would you support to protect residents and business property investments and allow those investments to accumulate generational wealth without government interference?
Ooh, that's a great question. I mean, you know, one of the things when I was in Tallahassee, we look at homestead exemptions, and homestead exemptions, especially, you know, when you start talking about, you know, military veterans, widows, and those people that are in need, and also just the average citizen. And one of the things I've talked about is, you know, we've got Save Our Home, which is, you know, from a state standpoint, our taxes only go up 3% a year. So we bought our house 6 years ago, and we took the house right down to the bottom when, you know, the 07, you know, crunch. And so what happened is the value of the house kept going down until you got to that bottom, and now from there on it's gone up 3%. So there are people that, you know, I'm a beneficiary of the Save Your Home, but for a lot of people that if you bought it last year, you're paying full market rate. So we got to be careful, you know, on property taxes. I think, you know, we made a small dent in the property taxes this year, which should help people. It was a $400,000 property taxing decrease, and mainly as a show that, listen, we understand where you are. Last year, instead of the normal 6% raise that some of our employees were a little upset about, I said, folks, everybody out there, the 57,000 people that we represent, all of them have been impacted by COVID. We can all take a little bit of a haircut. And so 3% is still a raise. I guarantee you there's a lot of people out there that lost their job, their hours have been cut back. They need help too. So let's see what we can do to help them. And so we dropped to the 3%. We got our financial house in order. Money's coming back. The COVID dollars are coming back. So we're in a position now that we can start to add based on the resources coming in. But when you think about losing $3 million in over 6 months, you're able to move things around and end up balancing your budget. Pretty substantial work went into making that happen.
Okay. Mr. Becker, the same question. Would you like me to repeat?
I think I understand the gist of the question. It was a long-worded one. So, you know, it's not about necessarily protecting wealth. From my point of view, it's about building wealth. I want to extend the wealth and the value of people's property. When you look at our city, people want outcomes. Wealth isn't judged based off of what a balanced budget looks like. It's based off of what's the quality of life in a particular community that you operate in, that you live in, that you run your business in. So, you know, as part of my platform, and I'll talk about it now because I'm not sure if a question will come up later, is, you know, we build those quality of life amenities and those outcomes within our city through economic development and investing properly and getting more of those quality of life amenities that people are requiring here within the city of Apopka. We're not going to move the needle by decreasing our property tax rate by 1/10 of a mil, because on average, the average resident in Apopka, that was $12 to $14 back in your pocket on an annualized basis. It's $1 a month. Yet that $400,000+ could have been more appropriately used to, hey, it could have gone to staffing, because there is critical staffing needs. It could have gone to quality of life amenity updates around our park space. I mean, we've seen plenty of presentations and the demand there. All of these things go to create a more vibrant community. And when you have a more vibrant community, your property values will rise. And that gives you the ability to generate wealth. So that's my focus. I mean, it's just all about making the most vibrant and thriving city that we can have.
Okay, thank you. The next question will start with you, Mr. Becker, and it is, as a mayor, what initiatives would you champion to improve the lives of all struggling residents and businesses in Apopka, particularly those residents and businesses south of 441 that may be adversely affected by gentrification?
Sure. I mean, and I touched on it just on my last question, so I jumped the gun a little bit. You know, economic development is something that I've campaigned on for quite some time. And it's certainly something that's on the forefront of what I'm trying to accomplish today. I mean, we want to have somebody that can proactively go out and get what we want to get as a community. And in terms of, having equal and equitable opportunities across all populations within our city of Apopka, and this is a conversation that we had even earlier this week. And it's reflective of sometimes, these issues come up during election time and they're hastily thrown together, and we need to focus on this beyond just the election cycle, which does not occur. And I've personally asked for conversations beyond just a noticed meeting that happens 2 days before the meeting occurs, and it's an hour and a half, and then people get cut off from speaking. But it's, when we look at South Apopka, the unincorporated sections of South Apopka, and we talk about what can we do for that community, we have to have purpose-built conversations. And I think the very first question that was asked during that conversation on Tuesday was, how do we get beyond and focus on this beyond the election cycle? And the feedback that I had provided based off the conversations that occurred during that meeting is we have to build a very structured framework by which we do these things. Conversation, okay, let's get past the conversation. Conversation has to lead to the analysis of the issue. That's going to bear action items that have to occur, because if you don't go from conversation to analysis to action items, things will just die on the vine. And then most importantly, it's the outcomes. I can't sit up here and look at my crystal ball and tell you with prescription what's going to happen in terms of an outcome across all these things that we theoretically discussed this evening. But you have to be open to what those outcomes might be. And those outcomes have to be based off of facts and a certain framework on how you get to those outcomes. As it relates to South Apopka, one of the outcomes might be, hey, we meet with all of the residents and they say, hey, we prefer to live in the unincorporated sections, but how do we come together as a city and county a little bit better to make the offering a little bit better? Or they may say, hey, we want to voluntarily annex in. And that way, but you have to build the value proposition about why they may want to come to the city of Apopka. And then the last of which is annexation by ordinance, where it would be up to the people to annex by ordinance, but then again, you still have to sell the value proposition of coming into our city. And that's all based off of the framework that I just discussed: conversation, analysis, actionable items, and outcomes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nelson, would you like me to repeat the question, or are you good?
I'm good, thank you. Well, let me tell you some of the things that we've done, and that's one of my campaign pieces back when I ran 4 years ago is, how do we give everybody access to prosperity? So a couple things that we've done in the last 4 years. One is we've got a $750,000 federal grant for home repairs in South Apopka. We got $250,000 for additional sidewalks. A lot of the areas down in South Apopka don't have sidewalks, or I only have one on one side of the road. We got another $750,000 sidewalk grant that's coming. If anybody's been out to the Billy Dean building, we're now having programming at the Billy Dean building. We got a $15,000 grant from AT&T to put in a computer lab. We're having not only children's classes there, we're having adults and seniors doing programming there. I've had at least 2, maybe 3 events out in South Apopka. I've gotten churches involved in helping me paint houses. So we've gone out there, done some minor repairs on the wood, painted some houses in South Apopka. As a state legislator, I got $250,000 to replace the line. The house, the row of houses right next to the dump, closest to the dump, was on well water, and they were concerned about the quality of that water. So I got a $250,000 grant to run a water line so those people had fresh drinking water. I also got $500,000 to take out this drug-infested store right across from Phyllis Wheatley. It will soon be a community center for adult training. So I've put a lot of effort into South Apopka. I feel like we're making progress, and our cooperation with Orange County has never been better. I've had discussions with Joe Carter, who's the sector commander for the sheriff's office. We're cooperating on cameras. Our IT department's putting out cameras that the Orange County's purchasing. So we're working together collaboratively. And so the opportunity for us to work together to solve the problems in South Apopka, it's not an Apopka problem, it's an Apopka and Orange County problem, and we're willing to do our part, but we expect Orange County to step up and do their part as well.
Okay, thank you. This will go back to Mr. Nelson to start off with again, and it sort of dovetails with the answering the question we just did. And what is your philosophy on eliminating blight and creating incentives for investments to eliminate homelessness, improve shopping, dining options, and overall safety for residents and businesses in the CRA?
Wow, that's a lot. Well, one of the things we've got in Tallahassee, I presented a bill, or got a bill in the legislature that's now made it all the way through the House committees, 3 House committees, that will make it a real opportunity for smaller restaurants to come to the CRA. If people don't know that to get a liquor license with less than 150 seats is north of $100,000. Those licenses that go on a lottery run from $100,000 to $150,000. So by reducing that number to 80 seats, we're able to these smaller restaurants that need the alcohol sales to be profitable. It gives them a chance to come in and be profitable. When you look at the other things that we've done in the CRA, we've got programming. You go back, it was a bad deal when they bought the parking lot behind on 5th Street. It was a terrible deal. Why in the world would you pay $300,000, $400,000 for a parking lot that the people that are around that needed anyway? So we paid $300,000 or $400,000 for a parking lot. Well, at that point, I've got a building that's half built. I might as well go ahead and put the roof on it. So we spent another $300,000 or $400,000 to complete the parking lot, which is beautiful. Would never have spent that money there. But we have the CRA, and we've got grants that we put for small businesses, for facade improvements. We've got for windows, for air conditioners, and the same with residential. And we've got an impact fee credit program. So we're hoping to get new residential buildings built in Apopka. But you think about South Apopka, we had a chance to put together a Station Street project that would have been a wonderful thing, kind of a kickstart for new buildings in South Apopka. And my opponent wanted to make this a political grandstand and said, you know what, Nelson got $2,000 from that developer, we need to kill it. And so we didn't have a chance to even take a look at the proposal. He killed it because he didn't want to look at something that would help South Apopka.
Okay. Mr. Becker, do you mean to repeat the question, or are you good?
No, I'll let the comments just kind of lead to my answer to the question. And to take a step back too, it's, talking about it's not an Apopka problem when it comes to South Apopka is a little ridiculous, because it is an Apopka problem to solve. The RFP process, again, throw the idea of campaign contributions out. The first thing to note is that RFP sat dormant for 3.5 years. We had plenty of opportunity pre-COVID to put that RFP out to the street to get Station Street going. This administration decided not to. And their obstacle, they didn't have enough employees to write the RFP. Now, if you've read that RFP, you know that it's not going to take 3.5 years to write. It's not that complicated. I announced my candidacy on August 5th. That RFP went out to the street on August 22nd. This is not near and dear to this mayor. The mayor was one of 5 that unanimously voted to reject the RFP. And yet, all of that blame goes to one single commissioner. I mean, I know math. My opponent doesn't. Nobody during that hearing spoke on that project. No one advocated it. The mayor certainly didn't advocate for it. The chamber president didn't advocate for it. The developer didn't advocate for it. And when I looked at that, what was in our lead-in packet that described that particular development, there was one little bullet on there talking about how there's going to be minor commercial. Our RFP read that if there's a multifamily type of development on Station Street, the entire first floor would be retail commercial space. That's what's going to allow for critical mass to occur in our downtown area. That's what's going to allow the existing businesses that are down there right now to thrive. So yeah, let's throw the money out the equation. We had one RFP response. And what was listed in the lead-in packet didn't address what was actually written in the RFP, and no one advocated for it. I certainly want to have a developed downtown. I mean, you read the history books here. They've been trying to have a thriving central commercial district downtown since the 70s, and it hasn't happened. My commitment when I become your next mayor is that I'll have that RFP back out to the street in short time and short order. But we have to have we have to go with the development community, invite them to walk that property. If there were obstacles for us to have a successful bid process there, it certainly wasn't communicated to us as commissioners. Because we should have asked to have the RFP redone so that we would have had more bids that came to the table. And it starts there. You have to have that spark to get that whole area thriving. And that's what I committed to do.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Becker, and it's back to you again to start with. And the question is, the city has a large number of enclaves within its municipal boundaries. As mayor, what plan would you develop to fold those enclaves into the city?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one we've already talked about, right? When you look at South Apopka as an enclave, it's just that. I mean, take a minute after the meeting tonight and punch up on google.com/maps and just type in Apopka. When it comes up on your page, you know, the red shaded area on the map will indicate it's the city of Apopka proper city limits. Just look how our proper city limits envelop all of South Apopka. Literally, Orange County has to go over city of Apopka property to service that area. So if we have an opportunity to either do annex by ordinance, where we are able to sell the value proposition both to our current residents as well as the residents of South Apopka, let's have that conversation. And during that time, there might be an ability to shore up some of the borders where we have some kind of that Swiss cheese or the enclaves that naturally occur through voluntary annexation. Again, a good resource to see what I'm talking about, if you go to ocfelections.com and look at our precinct maps, just look at the precinct maps. You have areas within our city that's shaded either the light orange or the darker orange to show where your voting precinct is for your municipal election on March 8th, shameless plug. But it shows areas where we're surrounding county. And we've got to have that connection with the county because we've got to sell that value proposition to the county as well. Because if they're sending county resources to pick up garbage or service it from a sheriff's perspective, that's a higher cost to the county. So we've got to look at ways so that we can save money for the county, save money for us to be able to serve it more efficiently.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, same question?
Yeah, we'll quickly go back, and the RFP he's talking about it was for the staff to go back and negotiate with the developer to bring forward a project that we could either agree to or not agree to. So it wasn't the RFP to build whatever was on the paper. We had some comments from Commissioner Smith about minority participation. We had some other questions. And the reason nobody showed up, because it wasn't an RFP. It was the RFP to negotiate. If you don't want to negotiate, then yes, it died. So a couple of things when we talk about enclaves. One of the things that Orange County, we took over their fire station up near Rock Springs. They had a fire station right outside of Kelly Park. And they came to us 4 years ago, right before, just after I got elected, and hey, they were willing to give us all of that area to take on. And at the time, it still makes good sense for us because our Station 5 was very underutilized, not enough calls out of there really to justify Station 5. So when they came to us and they said, yeah, we're willing to give you 75% of our ad valorem, fire ad valorem, and we'll let you, take on the county areas up there. I go, well, I know you're losing $1 million a year. Why in the heck would I settle for 75%? So I overrode our fire administration and said, you know what? We're not settling for 75%. We're going to get 100%. So we got 100% of ad valorem to help fund Fire Station 5. So those are the kind of things that we can do. We can work with the county where we can. There's a lot of times in areas where it's high value properties, they don't want to let us annex. And so, if you want to do voluntary annexing, that's fine. It would be nice to fix the Swiss cheese we've got around the city, but is that something we need to go working hard to do? I don't think so. If somebody wants to come in, if they don't want to come in, there might be a reason. Maybe they've got chickens and they know that our code enforcement maybe is a little tougher on them than would be county. So maybe there's a reason they don't want to be in the city. We don't have the time. We got too many things else going on that it's not a priority for me to worry about the people that may or may not want to annex in. We're always available. We'd love to be able to close up the Swiss cheese areas around, but we're not willing to spend a bunch of time and effort to do that.
Okay, thank you. And the mayor, it's going to come back to you again, and I'm going to apologize. It's the longest question you'll both get tonight, so sorry about that. Many residents and businesses are deeply concerned about Apopka's growth patterns, which places financial pressures on the community resources such as local school facilities, public safety level of services, and the utilities capacities to fully meet these new service demands. So, as mayor or as if you were elected mayor, when it comes to Mr. Becker, what specific policies would you sponsor to balance the current growth configurations relative to not assessing residents and businesses additional charges, taxes, or fees to cover the new service demands?
That is a big question. I mean, I think you've got to look at, obviously, impact fees are supposed to take care of growth. So if you're talking about a fire station, obviously we'll need a fire station 7 at some point in the town center. We've already got a kind of a gentleman handshake agreement with Orlando Health to put fire station 7 there. The question is, do we put a substation for our police out there? You know, to be determined. So when you talk about that, we got to make sure that we've got, obviously, our public safety is number one, and that comes, you know, first above all. When you look at other types of growth, you know, utilities, we're running, you know, our utility lines now down on Kelly Park. We're running them down Golden Gym. We've added a lot of capacity for our reclaimed water. When I got into office, we had minimal storage for reclaimed water. We were dumping water onto the north shore of Lake Apopka by the hundreds of millions of gallons. Folks, we can't do that. It's illegal, and yet we were doing it. So we now have a 350 million gallon pond out on Golden Gym so that we can basically handle 1/4 of our total reclaimed water needs just out of that one pond. So we've got to look at those. We're looking to buy some additional property behind our public services building to do some additional ponds, because we've got these contracts that were signed under former administration with nowhere to put the water. So we've got to get, you know, we've got to look forward enough to make sure we've got the utilities in the right place, that we've got the resources to go. We'll probably end up downsizing the number of well fields we've got because of the additional restrictions on how deep the wells have to go. Well, we'll probably be down to 3 or 4 well stations versus, you know, 6 or 7 we have today. So we've got to look at all those things, and we got to look at it proactively. You know, where we know the growth is in southwest and northwest Apopka. So how do we meet those needs? We'll probably end up putting a well field out on either one of those properties we have off of Harmon Road, as well as some kind of a station there as well. So we're forward-thinking, forward-looking, and we've got a great team that really helps us kind of see in the future as to what will be needed in Apopka.
Mr. Becker, same question.
And it's an important question, and since it's kind of related to schools, I'm going to provide a little bit of an education real quick based off the last remark. The RFP process is a request for proposal. If we would have gotten 5 responses to that RFP, how would they have done the evaluation on what that developer intended to do for our property? The request for a proposal is to put what concept that they wanted to do for it, not to have blind faith to go negotiate after the fact, because what's the point of the RFP process? So I think there needs to be some education there. In terms of handling growth, and I'm glad my opponent talked about the fire and police, during my time on council, we created fire and police impact fees to help offset the demands for our fire and police departments based off of the growth that's coming to Apopka. And growth is going to continue to come to Apopka. We've got over 17,000 rooftops or households today. I think the city of Altamont Springs probably has around 19, but we've also got 35 square miles. So we've got a big target on our backs in terms of Apopka, in terms of the development community and their interest of coming here. So with that said, you have to make sure that you have the proper planning and documents in place. Yeah, we just redid the land development code back in 2019, and I fought to have some of these kind of higher density, small lot type of neighborhoods eliminated from our land development code. I also fought to have thresholds in place where city staff alone didn't have the ability to approve 300 home developments without council scrutiny. Because I believe it's up to you, the resident, to make sure that you believe that the growth and developments that are coming to our community are the right ones to be in your backyard. In terms of schools, that's got to be a tight partnership. A lot of times when we're looking at developments within city council, you know, we'll get a report to say, hey, this is going to add, you know, 20 new kids to overcapacity situation, but yet we don't get staff reports that say, okay, here's what it looks like on an aggregate scale. I'm committed to having reports that say, at any time that we look at a school overcapacity issue, what the school is by name within our city, what the overcapacity is right now, and what the plan is, combined with our school board member, to make sure that we have a plan of attack to make sure that we're properly developing our city. You know, my opponent, he keeps on talking about handshake agreements. I don't want to do handshake agreements. I want to have purpose-built things within our city, proper planning. The most important document that guides our city is the comprehensive plan. That's going to be coming up for upgrading after the election. And if you think about it, the comprehensive plan is our Constitution. It basically talks about what we want our city to look like for decades to come and properly manage that. The Land Development Code is kind of the Bill of Rights, right? Both of these documents play off of each other, and you have to have the person that wants to put in the time to get that done. My opponent just said it's not worth his time, and that was clear even this past Tuesday. Didn't even want to sit at the table. Didn't want to even speak on behalf of the topic that was being discussed that day. I'm going to put in the time necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Becker, this question's for you as well. First one, the #1 contributor, according to some people, to global warming is urban sprawl, and local government is the main supplier of urban sprawl. What policies would you as mayor endorse to limit urban sprawl?
Well, I mean, I think urban sprawl, you know, obviously that comes in the planning piece. We've got future land use throughout our city where we have certain density types within our city where we want residential and some of that commercial space. But it's all about preserving that open space requirement as well. You know, pushing for as much open space as we can, having trees and things like that that offset some of that carbon footprint. And hey, I'll take credit for Camp Weewa just as much as my opponent. When we have opportunities that there's 70 acres of land that are lush with trees and green space, yes, as a council, all 5 of us contemplated that. And it was a council decision to purchase that property. Other areas within our city where we've preserved and expanded our open space was the birding park over by the entrance of the wildlife drive. Again, unfortunately, we entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Audubon Society, and nothing's really happened out there. So I want to preserve and extend our open space, our park space, to offset some of that urban sprawl impact. But there's, you know, certain areas within our city you want density to occur. The density, in my opinion, kind of straddles all going up to 429, the Wekiva Parkway. And then you want to preserve some of those open spaces in the central corridors and things like that. So it's a purpose-built plan to make sure that you're doing those things.
Okay. Mr. Nelson, same question.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, you know, green space, obviously, we got to make sure we protect it. And one of the things we're starting to look at is, are there places where, you know, the old Apopka, where, you know, it's been built out for years and years and years, where green space really wasn't as important, or we didn't think it was important because there was plenty of space, you know, in the next block over. So one of the things we've looked at is, okay, can we find some little pocket parks? Like one of the ones that's, you know, it's got a lot of use now is on Lake Street, right around from where I grew up. You know, a lot of kids use that. You know, it's right near Dream Lake Elementary and Apopka Middle School. So those are the kind of parks we'd like to look at. Are there places around in old Apopka that we don't have opportunities? We've got a big program for upgrading Northwest. Going to add a lot of different facilities there. But I'll tell you, one of the things I've told a lot of people, serving the legislature and did one of my, I guess, pride bills I passed was the CFX bill to not only put transparency and some teeth into how people operate throughout the CFX, but also to watch what had happened with the developers that dealt with the Audubon Society. So we, on the Parkway, Wekiva Parkway, what they did is said, okay, the environmentalists wanted no growth, and obviously developers wanted a lot of growth. And so what they came up with, which I thought was ingenious, they said, okay, let's take the 1 mile radius around that intersection of Kelly Park and the 429 at that time, now the Wekiva Parkway. We'll do heavy growth there. We'll do much higher densities than would normally be allowed, but then we're not going to let you do anything then between there and all the way to the river, to Wekiva River. So it's a great opportunity. So what we need to look at is those kind of opportunities where we have high density in an area, and then around that we've got a lot of open green space. So maybe you go higher density in this one block or 2 blocks, and then when you get outside of that, you got a lot of open space. So that Wekiva Parkway and Protection Act is, I think, a model for all of us to look at. The last thing I'll say is on the birding park, yeah, it's important to us. Obviously, COVID hit, we had to slow down, but we've got it was in our budget to do a bathroom. So we'll have a bathroom there, hopefully this year, if we can get cement, and the folks will have us a bathroom there so we can be the gateway to the wildlife drive.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, back to you again, and this is a question. It says, many local governments adopt economic development policies to inhibit the leakage effect, and leakage effect is defined as consumer spending their discretionary income outside their local economy. So as mayor, as current mayor, future mayor, what strategies would you promote to minimize the leakage effect?
That's a great question, and a lot of people don't realize, that sales tax stays within the county. Now, we get the benefit of International Drive and Disney and Universal Studios, so you spend taxes, or you spend money there, you get taxes here. So it's a great, opportunity for us. So if you go across, the line into Seminole County, those taxes stay with Seminole County. But I'll tell you, one of the things that I think, one of the biggest things I see, as I've walked neighborhoods, and I've walked probably in the last 5 months, at least 4,000 houses. I've knocked on 4,000 front doors in the last, 4 or 5 months. But how many houses you go to and they got an Amazon package in front? Well, folks, if you're buying an Amazon package, you're not supporting your local retailer. So I don't see it as much about Seminole County versus Orange County as I see it. It's the internet versus our local retailers. We always get calls about restaurants and retail. Well, if you keep shopping on Amazon, our retail people will go out of business. So we as a community, we as a state, we as a nation, if you want to keep those small businesses in business, you got to shop there. It's just that simple. And when you take restaurants, it's interesting. You go back 2 years before COVID, we as a city, I think we both agreed we didn't want drive-throughs. Drive-throughs are horrible. We don't want drive-throughs. Well, guess what? COVID hits. Everybody has to have drive-throughs. It doesn't matter if you're an Outback Steakhouse or the local Italian restaurant. Drive-throughs now are important. And we've just gotten Chick-fil-A is coming to Apopka, moving from Seminole County where they don't pay any Apopka taxes, moving back into Orange County where they'll pay taxes going toward Apopka. But they need 2 drive-throughs because to keep the stacking off 436. So those are the opportunities we've got. We've got to make sure that we support our retails, we support our local restaurants, and that we kind of wean ourselves, or at least cut back on all those Amazon packages that we buy every week.
Thank you. Mr. Becker, same question.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting analogy with Amazon, considering we have an Amazon industrial thing in our city. I mean, in terms of economic development, I mean, I've been a pretty open book on this topic. We need to invest in an economic development director, someone who's got the skill set, the know-how, and the ability to go out and proactively sell our city, the value proposition of our city, to bring these types of establishments to Apopka. My opponent, again, quoted in an article in the Apopka Voice, talking about how he's the economic development director for our city. He's going to go out and talk to multi-billion-dollar industrial companies or these other companies. But yet, in that own article, his own admission was, nothing's panned out yet, but not for lack of trying. Well, let's stop trying the same thing and let's try smarter, not harder. In terms of another example of us getting what we get, the running social media outcry is that we've got the evil triumvirate here in Apopka, the dollar stores, the auto parts stores, and fast food restaurants. And knowing this, last year I had created a presentation to council talking about the pervasive nature of dollar stores within our community. Within the city of Apopka proper, I think we had 12 or 14 at the time, and if you look at our county surrounding us, we had almost 20. And what they do is they concentrate themselves in areas of perceived low-income areas, and they create either food deserts or they scare off other retailers that the city would want to see from coming into those locations. And so I built consensus among our council. I made that presentation, worked with staff to have that policy brought back to the council, and we passed that ordinance language to say, okay, dollar stores aren't banned, but we're going to create buffer areas so that they can't operate within 2 miles of each other. And so we've got to look at common sense things to say, hey, we want to be proponents of our business community, but we want to do it smartly here within the city of Apopka. And I can't stress the economic development piece of it enough. I mean, I've talked to economic developers in the cities that, we talk about all the time, Winter Garden, Mount Dora. And I've shared my ideas or my interest of what I'm trying to do here within the city of Apopka. And there's a whole bunch of head nodding. I'm not off base. Let's not try and reinvent the wheel. Let's do what works for other cities. Winter Garden does it properly. Mount Dora does it properly. Sanford does it properly because they purposely invest in those particular programs. They're not relying on the strong mayor to be in the room and, again, making handshake agreements. It's about really putting a purpose-built initiative around this.
Thank you. Mr. Becker, last joint question starts with you. Local economies are susceptible to chronic stresses and acute shocks that hinder the community's businesses' ability to survive, adapt, and grow. As mayor, what economic development policies would you incorporate over the next 4 years to build a resilient business community?
That's a long, long question. Obviously the most impactful thing that's happened to our small business community has been the COVID impacts recently over the last 2 years. And you see, over 50% of the people in this country are employed by small business. So small business is the backbone of any community, including the city of Apopka. And what you don't want to do is be heavy-handed in terms of response to issues like COVID. And you have to make sure that if you have to get heavy-handed, if things come down where, if it's driven at the county level or the state level where the city may not have control over it, the city can still invest time and energy to make sure that if business owners are being negatively impacted by things like COVID or a pandemic, that we have support in place for that. Again, a face to that could be an economic development director, understanding the needs, the desires, how well a business is performing. If they're underperforming, what can we do policy-wise to help get you through something like that?
Okay. Mr. Nelson, same question.
Yes, well, one of the things we put into place this year is we have a municipal service tax, and so that's a 10% on energy and one of the things we did is it's 10% and everybody around us is 10%. And so what we said is, you know what? We get a big manufacturer, light manufacturing company comes into Apopka. We want to give them a break on that, and if we can get them a break from 10% down to 4%, we ought to be able to reach out and get some additional light manufacturing companies. So I had a company that talked to me. It's the first, second, or third largest warehouse for food products in the country, and they're right outside of the JPA between Orange County and Apopka. They would love to move in the city. It would be about a $100 million investment, but I'm not sure I can get Orange County to agree to let us annex them in because it's outside the JPA. So those are the kind of things, if you've got those tools in your tool chest that you can go out and sell your city, lower taxes, easy to work with, a great community development department that makes it, fun to come to work for. Those are the kind of people that you want to come to talk to you about, how do I, not only do I grow my business, who can I support, bring them back. You talk about economic development and bringing people here. We started, last year during COVID, we said, you know what? The Parks and Rec team came to me and said, why don't we start doing every Saturday night we'll do concerts. I said, really, concerts? Yeah. He said, it's outside. Everybody would love to be there. COVID, I know everybody's wound up about COVID. Let's do that. So I tell you, we had the concert last weekend, which was the Eagles tribute band. We had about 3,000 people. The buzz around here, we had people from Sanford sitting behind us. He says, man, I love this place. This is awesome. And her boyfriend lives in Apopka, lives out in Rock Springs Ridge. And he says, man, I'm trying to get her to move over here this way. And so, those are the kind of things that even though it's more intrinsic value, people like that. They love that Northwest complex. I mean, people want to spend time at Northwest. And so we've got those opportunities to keep the small businesses here that will create jobs, create, homes, and their business will thrive right here in the city of Apopka.
Okay, thank you. That ends the joint questions, and the community asked some questions. So there will be 2 questions for the mayor and 2 questions for Mr. Becker. So the first one goes to the mayor. And it says, at your last mayoral debate in 2018, you accused Mayor Kilsheimer of accepting excessive and an unwarranted amount of campaign contributions from outside developers. As mayor, you've accepted the same contributions from developers. What transformed your position and why?
Oh, I have. I've never turned a donation down. I mean, when I was in the legislature, one of the things I did, depending on who it was, I would take cigarette money, and I took alcohol money or gambling money for sure, and I would find an organization that was like Gamblers Anonymous. If I got a check from the tribe, I would send it to Gamblers Anonymous, and same with cigarettes, something for cancer. The developers have come to me, they say they like the way we operate. They like that our team at the community development is seamless, and they don't mind getting no for an answer. They just don't want to, they don't want a slow no. Give me a no, but just let me move on. And so I think when you look at developer, they want consistency, and they want transparency, and they want to be able to come in, and if they can figure out a deal. We've got one opportunity out on the Kelly Park interchange that we're looking at, and we've brought them in 4 times, and we keep telling them, no, this is not going to work. We need you to come back. But we've also added to the team is we've got, for the bigger projects, I've got an independent contractor that I have him come in and look at these projects and say, you know what, can you make this project better? I said, we got a great team at community development. The developer himself has got a pretty good plan, but let's get a third set of eyes, because they can see things in that development plan that I can't see, and maybe our community development team just overlooks something. So we've got this third set of eyes that we've got looking at it. But the developers, they want consistency. They want not fast answers, but they want deliberate, quick answers, so they can either move on with the project or go somewhere else. So they've come to me because of that. It's not because that I'm going to give them some sweetheart deal. GOBA just endorsed me, but GOBA endorsed me because I've fought to give them options for septic tank replacements. We've been able to do the on-site septic systems out at Wekiva Glen, and we're going to make a huge difference in meeting our BMAPs, which are our nutrient fertilizer runoffs, that we could never have met without some additional opportunities that GOBA could help us with.
This is just a follow-up for me for a question is, so given your position today, do you think in hindsight your acquisition to Mayor Kilsheimer would have been done differently about accepting contributions?
Well, no, I don't think so. I mean, I'll tell you this, is the Klein family alone gave him $30,000. I think that's a problem. I've taken $1,000, as my opponent would tell you, I took $2,000 from Tony Benge. Listen, if $2,000 will change you, then you should never have been in office to start with. I've always told people $1,000 or $2,000 should never change a vote. And if when people come in, I'm the same person I was before after the $1,000 donation. So I've never wavered on how I look at a project and whether it makes sense for the city of Apopka, and a donation won't make a difference.
Okay, thank you. Next question is Mr. Becker. It appears the city is experiencing a lot of economic development for little or no cost to the city budget. Why do you support creating an economic development department, and what financial benefits would the city realize for the extra expenditure?
Repeat the first part of that one?
Yeah, it appears the city's experienced a lot of economic development already, right? So at little or no cost, they're coming to the city now.
Yeah, so I mean, the economic development that we're seeing most predominantly is residential. I mean, you have residential, and obviously industrial's taking off fairly well. And again, that was started with the industrial complex where Goya sits, Coca-Cola sits, Amazon, and that was all under my time on council for us to approve those properties, and that's kind of created a groundswell of industrial that's gone on out there. But people can't, when I go with my daughters out for an evening, I can't go to Goya and can't crack open a can of beans. I can't enjoy a nice night after graduation at the Coca-Cola plant. So we have not invested hardly anything in economic development within the city. Last year we invested $50,000 for a website that's very reactive channel in which to promote economic development within your city. It's not to say that it's not a good thing to have. It's just not going to be the end-all be-all to what we need to have done within our city. So proper investment, I think that my opponent mentioned something about 1% of general fund to fund an economic development program. I'm not suggesting that. That would indicate, $400,000 or $500,000 that we would have to invest in day one. I'm not suggesting that. In fact, during budget workshops, I've actually created a job description along with what I thought the benefit package would look like, both from base salary to benefits to cost to go to conferences or other things where you want to make sure that you can go out and interface with the development and retail community. So that cost is not a material cost to the overall city in terms of what we stand to benefit from that. An economic development director should, in theory, pay for itself. Through increased tax base, we all talk about how commercial is our number one target in terms of what we want to come here because it's the most rich tax base that you can have, but at the same time provide the quality of life amenities that people want to have. So it's a small investment and it stands to have very good returns for our city. Again, I go back to this is benchmark success against all the cities that I've described before. And I'll say it again because this is what resonates at the doors. I knock on the same doors as my opponent. And every time I talk about my platform issues, it's, yep, I always have to go this place, and this place. Can't do it here in Apopka. Now, I try and stay in Apopka as much as possible, but there's only so many times that you can make those rounds, and you want to have those sit-down opportunities in places, and that's the environment that I want to build here within Apopka.
Okay, thank you. Next question for Mr. Nelson. In reviewing the city's comprehensive annual financial reports for the last 4 fiscal years, it appears that an aggregate of over $16 million was transferred from the enterprise funds to the general fund to balance overspent budgets. As mayor, what proactive measures would you continue to take to remain within budget over the next 4 years?
That's a great question. One of the things that, utilities has to pay money toward their benefits. So HR is paid for, utilities, HR, their workers' comp, their medical benefits, their pensions are all paid out of general funds. So the utility transfers money over to general funds to pay for those services. Under Kilsheimer, before my opponent got into office, he transferred $1 million more than the last year, which makes no sense. After my opponent got into office, they transferred $400,000 more for that to take money out of utilities, your streets, your wastewater, your water, your fleet, all those programs that we need to operate public works. They took $400,000 extra out of the utilities to put into general funds, and tell me what we got for it. I can't tell you one thing that we did under the general funds that we've benefited from under the old administration. So we've got to quit spending those utility dollars if it's not warranted. And they've even got some legislation in the legislature, which I think makes perfect sense, that you can't do that. You can't transfer money out of utilities where you can raise rates and not show any transparency. Send it over to general revenue so you can hire an economic development director or add whatever people or equipment you want to buy. So we've got to be careful how we spend utility dollars because we're scrutinized as to how we spend those dollars. We run the utility department just like it's a business, that we're there for the customer. It's not there to make a profit. We've got to have some reserves. And the other thing is they did when they took money out of the utilities, they bankrupted sanitation. So you know what we had to do? We had to go in and stop taking any money out of sanitation so they could actually become solvent again. So they could buy another sanitation truck. So those are the kind of things that under the former administration they've done. We've had to clean up those things, and utilities are it's over a $50 million program, and but people want services. As we say, everybody loves their police and fire, but I can tell you what, the first time the garbage truck doesn't show up, we got a problem. And we're buying a garbage truck every year and a half, a truck and a half every year. So we're making those improvements in our public works that won't cost, we've obviously inflation comes and we've got to raise those rates, periodically, but we're spending the money not like it's my money, but it's like, as I always tell my employees, it's like it's your mother's money.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Becker, final question for you. And we may have talked about this before, so this may be a little bit of an oversight or repeat. It appears that the workshop...
Just to clarify, before this, during prior questions, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It appears that the workshop model is not an effective in developing consensus about annexing South Apopka. So what model would you suggest to develop consensus to bring all of Apopka into the discussion?
Well, I think workshop model is the absolute right model. It's just, it has to be well run. You have to have the right people facilitating the conversation and be present during that conversation to get the desired outcome of a conversation like that. You know, we sit there and you use the most recent example of the South Apopka conversation, and it's real easy in terms of what you need to have in terms of getting into that conversation. Now, the day of, we get provided a sheet of paper talking about kind of the doom and gloom of what dollars might have to be expended to accommodate a mass annexation. And I can't, without anything else, it's saying that we would have to build another complete fire station, staff it, by all the capital investment around that fire station in order for us to even contemplate it. I mean, we have Station 1, we have Station 6 that we would have to explore to see if we even would need that. We have to have data, facts, during the conversation and talk about those facts. A workshop, especially around South Apopka, needs to be people from the community, both in South Apopka, both from Apopka residents, need to be sitting shoulder to shoulder with people from city staff, from county staff, from any other organization that might have some sort of stakeholder awareness about the conversation that we're having. So in this case, it's, you know, how many houses do we have? Of those houses in South Apopka, how many already have water? And there's a great many that already do. So you may not have infrastructure needs from a water perspective. What other impact fees might come up there? Talking to the county, how many calls do you typically run within that service area from a fire perspective? How many calls do you run from a police perspective? So that we understand kind of the operating costs that might be in play. You know, one of the things that was listed was the crime rate. Okay, maybe on paper, it looks bad if the crime rate spikes when we do something like this. But if the quality of our services with our police department helps to reduce that crime rate over time through good partnerships with our community and our police department, okay, yeah, we might spike a little bit on the front side, but if it gets better over a period of time and it's for the benefit of everybody in this community, then why not have that conversation? And I touched on it earlier to your point, is you have to have a very specific process in play. You have to have the conversation, have the analysis to have that right conversation, have the action items to go away, and then come back, and you rinse and repeat. One of the things that I mentioned during Tuesday's remarks is, you know, we have these conversations outside of City Hall. I think from the mindset, you have to have a mindset that you realize that City Hall is where decisions are made. So invite all of those people that I just described into City Hall, have the conversations there, and let's get things done.
Thank you. This is the final question, but it's also your closing remark. So this is your last chance, and we're going to start with Mr. Nelson. The question is, what's your vision for the city as mayor for the next 4 years? And then also just include any concluding remarks you want to make.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for coming out and spending, almost an hour, it will be an hour and a half with us. It's great to be here just to show show you, the public, our vision for, what the next 4 years could look like. We had the first 2 years cranking along, doing great. 2 years of COVID have hit, and we were down about between the 2 years, probably almost $5 million in sales tax. Things are coming back strong now. We've reduced $10 million in overall debt, which is about a $2 million positive cash flow. So think about that. On the $50 million budget, we've now added $2 million in cash flow for our city that we can look at expanding. So we've got some great opportunities at our Northwest complex. We've got about a $35 million package that we're over the next 10 years that we can put into play. We want to add some additional services out at Camp Weewa. So from the Parks and Rec Department, the things couldn't be brighter. Camp Weewa, along with the birding park in the close proximity. We're also looking at another piece of property that would add some value to the Camp Weewa. So you move over to utilities. Utilities, we're hoping to build a pond that will be able to take on all the water that Utilities, Inc., Altamont Springs, and Orange County can give us. We had to renegotiate a contract with Orange County because we couldn't take on the water. I had to plead with DEP, please let me run sprinklers 24/7 because I don't have anywhere to put the water because of the agreements that the former administration put into place. We've got the place in really good shape. We've made some changes. We've added people. We've got our cross-connection person, which I'm surprised that question didn't get asked here. A cross-connection person now worked for the county for 30 years, understands that completely. Dio, our public services director, 30 years at Orange County. You look across my team, our team, we have the best team available. We are set to make progress across all these different departments. I couldn't be more proud of the people that we've hired. Couldn't be more proud of the training that we're giving those employees so they can be the best that they can be. And the collaboration that we are now starting to see with these departments, we can go a lot of places without a lot of extra additional people. The amount of IT now that we've got, and we're putting that into place, we'll be able to save dollars and put that into technology so that we've got the chance to grow and give you what you want, which is a lot of extra restaurants and shopping and the things that people keep asking for. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Becker, same thing, your vision for the city and any closing remarks.
Sure. Ultimately, I want to stop talking in future tense. Too often in city council and, obviously the past 5 or 6 months during this campaign process, think about it. Honestly, drive around our city and look at what has or has not been done. Now think about the announcements that have been made since I announced on August 5th. We've got a lot of paper announcements, a lot of things about what we're going to do, but not what we can actually go and visit and see with our own eyes. My vision is for us to live up to our potential, and that's making sure that the people, which is our best asset here within the city of Apopka, have what they've been asking for. When I go to those doors, what I'm saying resonates with people. It's not a foreign idea that I'm presenting there. People nodding their head because they're desperate for those things to come to our city. We talk about the recreation amenities up at the Northwest Rec. There's $0 in our budget for that. Yet we have this nice study. You would have thought that it would have happened before our budget workshops, but there's 30 some odd $1 million worth of amenities that we went out to our residents and asked them to take another survey. Okay, what do I get after that? Nothing. There's no funding mechanism in play for those recreational amenities. So how are we going to pay for it? He wants to buy more land for Weewa across the lake. It's highly contaminated. $800,000, and how are we going to pay for it? General fund reserve. Huh? That's not a lights on, doors open type of an expense. So my vision for Apopka is to be straight with the people, be fact-based, forward-thinking. I'm an experienced leader. I've worked in the corporate world for 20 years. I've hired teams. I'm responsible. I'm responsive. Every person that's emailed me or called me, I try to get back with them within a 24-hour period. I've failed on some of those fronts, but for the most part, I'm highly responsive to the people that put their trust in me over the last 6 years to represent them. So my vision is, quite simply, I want my daughters, my oldest daughter Madeline is here this evening, I want an opportunity for them to say, after they go off to college, if that's what you choose to do, they want to say, yeah, I'm from Apopka. And I want to go back there after I graduate because there's a lot of quality of life opportunities for me to go back to the city of Apopka. And I want that for my family, and I want it for the families of all of you all in this room and that are watching tonight. So I thank you. I thank you for the opportunity to be here at Victory Church. I thank the Apopka Informed Citizens, voters, for putting tonight's thing on, and the Apopka Chief for covering it. And I would greatly appreciate your vote on March 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. On behalf of all the citizens of Apopka, I want to thank both candidates for participating tonight and giving us your positions and items of concern to the public at large. I'd also thank the online community who's been listening and watching, perhaps, and attending this mayoral debate. We hope it's been informative and instructive at least. Candidates, we wish you both good luck on your campaigns and for the upcoming March election as well. This same type of forum is going to be used and also broadcast next Thursday, February 27th at 7 p.m. from this same location to hear the other candidates running for city commission. So we ask people to, who are online, please join us for that. We also do want to thank Victory Church as well for the use of their facilities and the Apopka Chief for the use of their streaming services. We appreciate everyone's willingness to engage Apopkins in this with the potential elected officials. Finally, we want to urge all citizens to know the issues affecting Apopka, understand each of the candidates' positions on those issues, but most importantly, go out and vote, right? Use your right to vote. So not only this election cycle, but every election cycle. So please, those folks in the audience, have safe travels if you're going home tonight. If you're moving from one room to another in your house, safe travels there as well. But so, thanks for attending.
I was gonna say, is Commissioner Bankston letting people stay here? Because you said if they're
No,
gonna go home
hopefully
tonight.
looking from home to home. Anyway, good luck. Take care, people.
Thank you.